I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, it feels really good to have Superman and Lois back. Superman and Lois is, and I will say this again, the best thing that the CW has put out in years and years and years and years. And season 3, episode 1 just goes to show as to why. Episode 1 did everything that it needed to do. And you guys know me, I'm pretty critical, but this episode I don't really have too many issues with. You know, it sets up where we're at 27 days since, the world almost ended with Ali Alston and what went on there. We have Tal-Rho trapped. Well, actually, is he trapped? He kind of wanted to go there in that bizarro Earth. And in the meantime, we have Lois and Clark enjoying their time in Tal-Rho's villa, which leads to an interesting situation this episode that was teased in, well, the lack of trailers that we got with this pregnancy. So what I really liked about this episode, first and foremost, is that, it didn't feel like they were shoving anything in our faces without any kind of substance there. The whole kind of, hey, look, swoosh, swoosh, Superman fighting, punch, punch. But, when you analyze the rest of the story in the episode, there's not much there. This wasn't that. This episode was filled with what the show's title bloody well is, Superman and Lois. It is a family-oriented show in terms of where Superman is at in his life, and it really capitalized on that very well this episode. Namely with Lois and Clark and where they're at right now in time is the best they feel like they've ever been. The boys, it's their birthday. Everything just feels like it's got kind of a good equilibrium about it that sets up this season 3, whilst also teasing the villain with also giving us some great action at the same time. And this goes back to what I meant with how they weren't shoving in our face. Sure, they gave us a lot of action and that was fun. Some really impressive action, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But at the same time, there was lots of other things decorated in other aspects of a story that you would usually strive to do in an episode, while also slowly teasing us the whole Bruno Manheim thing, a little bit of a Lex Luthor name drop, and obviously we know that Lex Luthor is coming our way. But for sure, Bruno Manheim being the main poised up threat that we actually had introduced from this non-Arrowverse Diggle last season. But this gets initially addressed in the episode with Lois and Clark in bed, saying all the years we spent investigating him in Metropolis, we couldn't make anything stick. And Lois is like, well, no wonder why. Like, it's Bruno Manheim. Bribery, extortion, intimidation. We couldn't get anyone to say anything about the biggest illegal weapons dealer in the country. And he's definitely cooking something more up in this episode, and there's all kinds of speculation we can get into with theories like, is this in league with Lex Luthor? Lex Luthor's been out of the spotlight for quite a while, if memory serves me correctly, but the criminal underworld knows exactly who this man is, while still on the surface he's this big business giant and whatnot, but he's still been out of the spotlight. But it seems as though, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's funding Bruno Manheim, or maybe Bruno Manheim doesn't need this funding, but something sinister between those two characters could forge a connection that provides very difficult to Superman. Of course, we have the new fortress that is for the entire family. I loved seeing how, something we don't always see, maybe a bit more in the comics, but Superman can literally, sort out a sparring program for Superboy, Jordan, to practice his Superboy ways by fighting a little hologram atomic skull. But I was kind of hoping that, when we did see initially Clark and Jordan flying, really enjoyed that, just the kind of father-son dynamic there, that, the tease from last season with how his mother could have some Kryptonian tech for Jonathan, I was hoping that those two flying in that scene, I don't know if anyone else thought this, could be Jordan and Jonathan, and that would be more of a situation just like John Henry Irons' steel suit. Maybe there's some Kryptonian stuff that could have allowed Jonathan to fly. Again, I understand, and I don't need Jonathan to get powers. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, we're gonna get it, we need it. But again, the show teased it itself, so it's not a stretch beyond the imagination for me to assume that this Kryptonian tech would also allow Jonathan to maybe access the fortress without bloody being flown there or getting a boat. But that could still come. This is only episode 1 after all. But with the fact that they concentrate quite a bit with Jonathan driving, and I understand all of that as well. I do love how one son of Superman is kind of Superboy, and the other one is a kind of grounded human side, like his mother Lois, and, you know, exploring the whole driving thing with that chat between Jordan and Jonathan, saying that this is his kind of freedom, without him kind of getting mega sour about how his brother can soar and fly and shoot lasers out of his eyes. I still really enjoy it. I think Jonathan is a really interesting character. Maybe sometimes people on the surface prefer the super-powered one, but on the contrary, I do find Jonathan very interesting. But that reminds me to talk about something. We don't have Jordan Elsass as Jonathan anymore. Now, this is obviously old news. There was a recasting, and right off the bat, Michael Bishop, who is now in the role of Jonathan, I thought he did a great job. I honestly don't. It's kind of funny. Maybe it's way too premature for me to say this, but in terms of what Jordan Elsass brought to the show, and I really liked his portrayal. Like, again, Jonathan was a character of whom I found probably one of the most interesting on the show. There wasn't really any odd chemistry there between him and Lois, or, you know, Jordan. The brotherly scenes that we got, again, outside on the porch with them, you know, giving a bit of brotherly advice to how Jordan messed up. I feel like he slipped into the role very naturally, and I guess that the casting directors, when maybe they were stressing about, oh god, how do we find someone who is, you know, really what we're looking for, they did a good job in finding him. But anyway, back to the whole Superboy stuff. When he was flying home, well, it turns out Superman heard that there was some danger with a crane. Am I going crazy? Maybe I was missing something, but I feel like there was like a little Wayne logo on that crane. And when Superman, like, you know, got to that city, it did feel a little bit like Gotham to me. I feel like there was the Wayne Enterprises tower with the 2 points. Now, obviously, inherently, having little 2 pointy bits on a building doesn't necessarily make it Wayne Enterprises. However, that is usually a bit of a iconic image to Wayne Enterprises in the comics. But yeah, maybe I'm reading too far into that, but it could be a little cool Easter egg without them explicitly going into it. Jordan tried to, I guess, weld the crane to kind of connect it back together, but Superman was just like, no, you're just making it worse. So even though Jordan said that he was just trying to help and he had it under control, he definitely didn't have it under control. That's something I do agree with Clark there. It is a learning curve. Obviously, one of the fantastic and I would say underrated things about Superman that people don't always observe on the face value of things is, you know, just because he's all powerful, you know, basically invulnerable outside of kryptonite and magic and whatnot, he still has to have the brains to sort out situations, and often multitasking in a situation and think on your feet right there and then. And there was great examples of this in season 1. There's like that nuclear meltdown thing going on. He was like, right, okay, I need to stop this and do that, heat vision this, and then, you know, cold breath this. You have to know how to do it very specifically, and that requires a lot of intelligence. And so obviously a teenage kid being like, okay, I'm gonna try heat vision that. Will the physics of that really work? Probably not. Oh, okay, it's literally about to hit the ground and possibly kill people if it wasn't for my dad showing up. So looking forward to more scenes like this. Anyway, with Lois, I love the journalistic investigation they're giving her. After all, this show is titled Superman and Lois. So she goes to the hospital and pretends to be a patient to ask John Henry Irons' sister, on this Earth that is, not the John Henry Irons that we have from the destroyed Earth, what happened to her brother? Was he in league with Bruno Manheim? Because after all, if you cast your minds back to the Diggle meeting with John Henry Irons, he said that this Earth's version of you died. There is a sister out there. So I think a lot of us expected that maybe he would be doing this in this scene or something like that. And I'm not ruling something like that out in the future, like John Henry Irons, looking into this Earth's version of himself and what he really got into, maybe with his sister. And I expected that to be a bit of a weird personal storyline, like they kind of keep doing, kind of like Sam Lane being the grandpa to Natalie, even when he isn't, kind of thing. They've always got that going on with various characters. That could still happen because, you know, we did hear that John Henry Irons told Lois to stay away from this. So he is apparently most certainly on the case still with all of this Bruno Manheim stuff and, working for Sam Lane at the DoD, even if it is out of his own little workshop with Natalie. But yeah, like this turned into something else. And that is with Lois's symptoms that she kind of truthfully admitted to go in there to pretend to be a patient could mean pregnancy. And obviously later on, she finds out that might be the case. It kind of seems fairly obvious, at least at first. And I feel like, on top of the, romance and chemistry that they were showing between Lois and Clark and how they've been better than they've ever been this episode, and even though there was a bit of wobbliness between Clark being a little bit like, yeah, sure, and Lois feeling a little bit deflated about that outside the Kent farm later on in the episode, it was still like a really encouraging and happy flair that was brought into their lives that, again, they were initially unsure about, but as the episode progresses, it compounds on the happy feeling you have with Lois and Clark this episode. And I just felt really, that's really sweet. But then, amongst all of this happiness, later on, and I know I'm kind of darting around the episode at the minute, it's replaced with nothing but concern for Lois's health. And I was just like deflated then, because the fact that the doctor ruled out pregnancy, and it's like, well, okay, well, the fact that you've got this, and there's swelling here, and then there's this, that makes me very, very concerned that they might give Lois an arc of maybe having a very severe illness, which, is something Superman can't save anyone from, which is really concerning. Could be a very, very powerful story. And I say concerning, not out of like criticizing the episode, by the way, just like I don't want to see Lois go through this. It would just be really, really sad to witness. So we're gonna have to wait and see where this one could go. So other storylines in this episode with other characters, of course, is with Jordan and Sarah. I don't blame the guy. Like he literally has feelings for this girl, and she doesn't want it to be awkward. But I like how he candidly said at the birthday party later, it's like, well, it is awkward. I want to be with you. You don't want to be with me. Yet, we're still interacting, and, we're trying to not, be weird, but it is still going to be weird because I like you. So we have that going on there. I don't know where this is going. I can understand that Sarah wants time for herself, but, like, I'm genuinely questioning, is she going to get back into him? Are they going to get back together? Or is it just going to be completely platonic and Jordan's going to get over her eventually? I'm not sure really where they're going with this. I did like Jordan and Sarah together, so I kind of would like them to get back together eventually. I'm not that invested in it, but would love your thoughts there. Then another storyline, of course, is at the birthday party. We had, of course, Kyle have some enjoyable time with Chrissy. That seems like it could be actually, even though it seems like a one and done, be pushing more towards that direction, because when we had Lana later on serve the divorce papers to Kyle in person because she didn't want the lawyer to do it, I was kind of concerned. I was like, oh man, is this going to be the moment where he opens the door and she's like, oh, I can't do it? Because we had that whole thing earlier on where I definitely feel like this was intentional. We had Kyle asking her, you haven't signed the divorce papers. And she's like, well, every single time I get down to do it, some catastrophe pops up. And it's like, sure, you could be saying that, but it could be an excuse for like how you can't quite bring yourself to do it. So I thought they were going down the whole CW kind of like, Lana has, her reasons for wanting to leave him, but can't quite go through with it. So they might string this arc throughout the season of her finding her way back to him because she can't quite divorce him. But no, he opened the door and she did it. So, again, pleasant surprise. I'm glad they're not stringing that out. It's not like I don't want Lana and Kyle to be together, but I'm just glad that they're not doing a tropey CW thing, if you know what I mean. Looks like Kyle and Chrissy could find their way together because a little bit of a promo for next episode that we'll get into later sees Kyle and Chrissy together again. Granted, it's like an outdoor situation with, whatever's going on in the plot, but it does make me think, oh, maybe it could be something more in the future. Now, also at the birthday party, we have the ex-mayor Dean, I believe his name is, walk right up to Lana and basically say, given her storyline this episode, she's swamped, obviously being the new mayor, trying to like shift around this money to prevent this mold situation going on. But given what was set up as to where the money was allocated from the previous mayor, he goes absolutely crazy at her for messing with things that she doesn't understand, like she's way over her head. So I am very intrigued as to what this could potentially connect to. Is it connected to any other shady dealings with the larger characters characters of whom still have yet to really be involved, like Lex Luthor and Bruno Manheim, but would they really have like a crazy interest in Smallville? Like maybe, but it could just be like a really self-contained story with Lana this season, with shady dealings from the ex-mayor, and it could introduce some dangerous elements that is still local to the town, but isn't necessarily connected to something much, much, much larger. But anyway, towards the end of the episode, Clark hears the danger, goes to Metropolis, and Atom Man has returned. And he's not just out of jail, but he has powers, and he smacks Superman up. I absolutely love that shot with Superman coming out of the flames in slow-mo, just being, bending his head a little bit. It's like, okay, let's do this. We have a I could do this all day reference. I also kind of like, I don't know if this is an intentional reference, but Superman says, but not around them. And that's because, obviously, Superman doesn't want to fight in Metropolis with somebody as powerful as Atom Man seems to be, because that would create a Man of Steel event. So he tries to take it out, but even with that being said, they are constantly like smashing into the floor, drifting through it, drifting through buildings. Not as mad as Man of Steel, of course, but this was super impressive. Of course, this is a premiere episode, so they do pump a bit more fuel and budget into these episodes in particular, but I was really impressed by this fight, very entertained, and if they do anything like this again in the future, I really can't wait. Like, for a CW show, that was really awesome. So I guess Bruno Manheim sent him and dispatched him to fight Superman or cause some problems in Metropolis to inevitably summon Superman there, and that's why I'm thinking Bruno Manheim and Lex Luthor are connected. I think Bruno Manheim could have his own agenda, but maybe in order to get to the heights he wants to, maybe his, personal beef isn't with Superman, but he has his own ambition, but he needs Lex Luthor's help to maybe achieve that, and Lex Luthor and his motivation would obviously be Superman, so maybe their interests align there, and that could be what is happening with such as Atom Man here, and probably other powered people we're gonna meet. It was kind of weird, like he got shot, but like there was no bullets, and then we had that weird kind of face monster demogorgon-y kind of person there. I mean, it wasn't really a monster, but just the way the mask looks, it seems that he can, or they can, cast a power on Superman, because immediately after the weird noises started happening out of that person's face or whatever was going on, Superman launched up into the air and hears danger everywhere. So I'm thinking this could link to that scene in the trailer where Clark is like racing towards Lois, and it looks like the Daily Planet is crushing down on top of her. Could this be a fake situation similar to what was teased in this moment where he heard all of this stuff going on, but in actuality there wasn't really anything going on? But the trailers did also tease Sam Lane getting a bit annoyed at Superman because Lois is in danger, so maybe I can't rule that out because something evidently does happen to her. I don't know, but I'm certainly intrigued as to who this person is working with Bruno Manheim, because of course we saw them again at that ending scene where Bruno Manheim has this little kind of secret labby operations place in his subway where Atom Man got brought back to life by these little lab techie doctor people, and so he can resurrect people. And what does that mean he's gonna do with other people? What is the bigger picture here? As Bruno Manheim says, just like I told you, we're getting closer. Closer to what? To be able to maybe recreate a Superman, or recreate a person who can just come back to life and take on Superman? Or are they going to try and bring back somebody else? I have no idea what's going on, other than just knowing Lex is coming in and probably involved in this and is sponsoring what Bruno Manheim is doing. Very, very intrigued. So all in all, guys, I had a great time with this episode. I thought it was a solid foundation for Season 3. The promo for the next episode shows possibly another powered individual, with Lana saying that he was so afraid I heard it happen. We see Jordan landing in front of Jonathan, Sarah, and Natalie, so it seems like they're hanging out again. Chrissy is reporting on the murder. Perhaps that's related to what Lana was saying. And of course, we also see John Henry in pain, and it looks like a power is being used on him with the veins rippling in his face, so maybe he's looking into the Bruno Manheim stuff, but we're gonna have to wait and see. The promo is a bit ambiguous, and it looks like Clark and Lois will also be dealing with the fallout of what could be going on with Lois's health, and also the false hope, and how it was fun imagining that they might have been having another baby, which I think, again, is going to be a really emotional punch this season. And I don't want to go through it. I really like Elizabeth Tulloch, so, and you know how much I like these two together, Tyler Hoechlin, so... yeah, could be quite emotional this season. So what did you guys think of this episode? I would love to know your thoughts. What did you think of what I had to say in this review? Can't wait to see what you also have to say about theories in the future with regards to the villains and what could be cooking behind the scenes. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really, really deeply appreciate it if you left a like on it. Maybe consider subscribing for more Superman and Lois reviews and breakdowns. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see you fellow Kryptonians in the next video. Goodbye.